Welcome to the introductory video on measures of variability. Let me get the title up here on our board. Measures of variability. Okay, two of the most important characteristics of any distribution that we're going to be working with are really the measures of central tendency. That's going to be an important measure. But the other measure is going to be how the scores are, how they vary in the actual distribution, how they're dispersed around the measure of the central tendency. And so we can kind of think of measures of variability as this dispersion. We can kind of think of it as how heterogeneous the scores are. Those are probably two of the best kind of descriptors here of the characteristics that these measures of variability are going to kind of provide for us. Most research in kind of the social behavioral sciences are going to give us at least one measure of central tendency, and they're going to give us usually one measure, at least one measure, if not more, of variability. The measure of central tendency is generally the mean. It can be another measure. The second most popular one would be the median. And the measure of variability is usually going to be standard deviation, although you might see range or variance or so on and so forth. Central tendency does not really describe the differences among the n scores. And so in other words, if we have n scores creating our distribution, what those n scores are not telling us, what the measure of central tendency is not telling us, central tendency is not describing, does not describe the differences in those n scores. It only tells us what the balance point is, what that central point is in the distribution. So we need different measures. If we want to know how the n scores differ relative to that central balancing point, we have to develop measures to do that. And our most common ones that we're going to see, now there are more than this, but our most common measures of variability, and the ones that we're going to talk about relative to this chapter, are going to be range. Of course, you can have interquartile or semi-interquartile, but we're just going to limit it to range. Variance is going to be an interesting concept for us. Standard deviation. Of course, to be able to calculate variance and standard deviation, we're going to need to learn these concepts of what a deviation score is. So there'll be a brief video on, let me back that up, deviation score. You're going to need to know the concept of what sums of squares are. And so we're going to build these. We're going to start with the range. We're going to build with deviation score and sums of squares, and then show how these deviation scores and sums of squares can provide measures of variance for us and a measure of standard deviation. So that's the introductory video. Thanks for watching.